All right, sounds good. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Stormwater Management for Existing Development, SMED or SMED. I've heard a couple different pronunciations, so choose your favorite. My name is Rebecca Dugopolski. I'm with Herrera Environmental Consultants. I'm a principal engineer there, and I've been there about 20 years now, working with jurisdictions all over Western Washington on meeting permit requirements, everything from source control to O&M to SMED, and what we'll be talking about today. And I'll hand things off to Don to introduce himself.
Thanks, Rebecca. So Don McQuilliams, I'm with the City of Bellevue. I'm the operations manager with Bellevue Utilities. I oversee our storm and surface water maintenance section, as well as all the regulatory compliance aspects of the stormwater program.
Great. Yeah, and Don is the lead agency for City of Bellevue, leading the grant proposal. So this is a grant of regional or statewide significance project that we'll be working on. So Don and I will be your speakers today. We also wanted to recognize our other team members who weren't able to join us for the talk today, but have been valuable in putting together background behind the project so far. So we'll have Carly Grail with King County and also Blair Scott with King County. Well, that will be participating in the project as well. So wanted to recognize them as well before we jump into things. Our agenda today, we'll have about an hour together. We'll have about a mix of sharing information with you and gathering feedback through a Mentimeter poll and then a short survey at the end. We'll be covering what is SMED. We'll be covering our gross grant objectives, that grant of regional or statewide significance grant that I mentioned. We'll be talking about some lessons learned from a phase 2 perspective. So Don will be covering that. We'll have a quick warm-up poll. And then we'll be going into more specifics on the grant, talking about our scope, timeline, and regional planning map, some time for discussion, and then we'll take questions and wrap up at the end. If you have clarification questions as we go throughout, Don, hopefully you can monitor the chat for me while I'm talking and let me know if there's any questions that pop up there.
Yep, happy to.
Great. So to start off with, what is SMED? So this is a Stormwater Management for Existing Development. It's a new term in this permit cycle. It's section S5, C7 in both Western Washington permits, both the phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 permit did have a previous iteration of this called Structural Stormwater Controls, or SSC. So that was in the previous phase 1 permit, but now it's consistent between phase 1 and phase 2, using this SMED term across the board. The goal is to retrofit existing development or implement tailored stormwater management program actions to reduce or prevent negative water quality impacts from your municipal separate storm sewer system, or MS4. And then the program also addresses regional stormwater facilities and collaboration, typically between phase 1 and phase 2 jurisdictions. And we'll be talking more about that today as well. So the objectives for the gross grant that we applied for Ecology, the goal was to provide easy to use SMED planning tools that both phase 1 and phase 2 permittees can use to meet their SMED requirements. These tools will allow users to enter a project idea and see the expected SMED program points for phase 1s or assigned equivalent acreage for phase 2s. And the tools will also assist permittees in reporting their SMED requirements to Ecology, using Ecology's Excel template that's been developed for phase 1s and creating a similar template for phase 2s that doesn't currently exist. There will also be a mapping tool that will be developed through this project that will give users the option to enter their project information into a shared map that could be accessed by agencies across the region to help facilitate collaboration. So really kind of a few different areas that we're hoping to develop tools for, but all focused around meeting SMED requirements and communicating that information to Ecology. So I wanted to cover a little bit about what SMED is. A lot of you are probably familiar with this or have read through it, but wanted to just cover it at a high level so you kind of understand the differences between phase 1 and phase 2 permit. As I mentioned, the goal is to implement stormwater facility retrofits or tailored stormwater management program actions to meet criteria listed in Appendix 12 of each permit. You're required to list planned projects in each annual report that's submitted to Ecology, and then achieve 1,000 SMED program points for phase 1s and fully fund, start construction, or completely implement projects to meet the assigned equivalent acreage for phase 2s. And both of those targets are March 2028. You can count projects that started construction on or after January 1st, 2023. That applies to both phase 1s and phase 2s. Phase 2s can also roll over their excess credit up to 50% to the next permit term. So that's also great. If you've got a head start on some of these, you can roll over that credit to apply to the next permit term. And you can also collaborate to meet a regional goal. And as I mentioned, we'll be covering that a little bit more today. Here's a list of the different types of projects that can count towards SMED. These first three are new facilities. Those could be flow control facilities, runoff treatment facilities, or a combination, and also low impact development BMPs. Also retrofitting existing treatment or flow control facilities, larger maintenance projects with capital construction costs greater than or equal to $25,000. And then a variety of other projects. So you'll see here a lot of other things that have benefits for stormwater, but aren't a facility-based project. A couple of things to note here that there are some non-qualifying project types related to in-stream work. So things that would not apply would include things like in-channel habitat and stream restoration, fish barrier removal, stabilization of down cutting, in-stream culvert replacement, and mitigation projects. So those are not considered to be part of this program. You'll also see that the numbering is slightly different between the phase 1 and phase 2 permit. And then also that this watershed collaboration doesn't have a number in the phase 2 permit, but is something that is mentioned in Appendix 12 as well. Focusing on phase 1, so as I mentioned, there's something called program points. So there's points you can get for design projects and then constructed or completed maintenance stage projects. Phase 1s will have to meet 600 minimum points in the design stage and 400 minimum points in the construction completed maintenance stage. And then also a minimum of 275 points of the following project types. So whether that's new stormwater facilities or BMPs, stormwater facility retrofits, or again, that maintenance with capital construction costs greater than or equal to $25,000. I mentioned earlier that you can track projects all the way back to January 1st, 2023. And these 1,000 points will need to be achieved no later than March 31st, 2028. For phase 2s, things are a little bit different. The target here is based on equivalent area, and that equivalent area is calculated based on 8 acres per population of 50,000. So here, I just put a few examples here. This is not everyone that's listed in Appendix 12. But wanted to put kind of the range in here to show what different jurisdictions are looking at. So we're looking all the way from smaller cities such as Algona, Clyde Hill, and Medina with a half an acre that will need to be addressed through this permit requirement, all the way up to 24 to 25 acres for the city of Bellevue and city of Vancouver. So you can see there's quite a range based on population, how many areas will need to be, or how much acreage will need to be retrofitted or equivalent acres of those other projects that I mentioned. The calculation method is also different depending on the type of project that you're implementing. So for LID and new stormwater treatment and flow control facilities, those are easier to calculate, but then when you get into these other project types, it gets a little more complicated. So there are similar credits between the phase 1 and phase 2 permit. And there's kind of this conversion factor here for the different types of projects. It's very similar between the two permits. A couple areas that differ are in this restoration of forest cover metric. For phase 1s, it's 0.5 times the acres restored, and for phase 2s, it's 0.25 times the acres restored. And then in floodplain reconnection, there's also a cap here in the phase 1 permit that's not in the phase 2 permit. So up to 25% of your assigned equivalent acres can be achieved using these non-structural project types for phase 2s. Above that 25% threshold, you can report, but you won't receive credit for. You'll also notice down here, there's credit for different maintenance actions as well. So street sweeping, this would be above and beyond the permit requirements that will kick in towards the end of this permit cycle for phase 2s. And then for line cleaning, this is based on linear feet cleaned during the permit cycle. All right, Don, you want to talk about some lessons learned for phase 2s?
Yeah, sure. So when Herrera and I first started talking about this concept to make this a gross grant, some of my frustration was in how to achieve my acreage. And I had shared with them at the time that I'd managed to get at least 25% of my acreage totals through non-structural BMP. And then I started looking into, could I get additional acreage via the SMAP process and going above and beyond what's required in the existing permit. And I found out that, yeah, maybe that's possible. And I'll speak to that more in a second. Another concept that came to us was talking with our CIP project managers. We do a lot of road rebuilds here in Bellevue because we're out of space basically. So we rebuild our roads. And to do that, we rip up our existing roads, but we don't rip them up all the way down to the subgrade. So talking with Ecology, if I take the pavement down, a few inches and then put new pavement over the top of it, that pavement is not considered replaced pavement. So it can be eligible for retrofit projects as long as we're installing treatment to treat that old existing pavement that wasn't treated before. So we're looking at that. So there's some ideas I'm throwing out for you. So I'm going to recommend you guys that haven't started this yet, start planning it now because it gets to be a little cumbersome, given that we have March 31st, 2028 to get to. And there's lots of folks out there that are working on this. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. There's the mentorship program through Ecology that you can reach out for. There's NPDS work groups, the stormwater work group. There's a bunch of us out there that are looking at this. I think I have one more slide here, Rebecca. Yeah, so let's talk about this. So the SMAP. So you have to do another SMAP this time around. And in talking with Ecology, you can get an additional 25% credits if you go above and beyond in your SMAP area with increased field screening, with prioritizing your source control inspections, with enhanced O&M, or with a new behavior change campaign. But it has to be focused on that SMAP area. So we're looking at these right now to see what's possible with our upcoming SMAP and adding on to our existing programs. Maybe we're going to do another behavior change campaign. Maybe we'll do a targeted source control outreach to that specific SMAP area. We don't know. Where I'm going with this is you can get up to 50% of your points just through non-structural actions. And then the frustration starts with trying to cite the remaining 50%. And that's where Herrera and I really started talking about, hey, this SMED project would be a really good project because these retrofits are hard to cite, especially in a town like Bellevue where we're completely built out. And it costs a lot of money for me to do the math and hire consultants to figure out what I'm going to get bang for my buck.
Great. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
So next we wanted to have a quick poll, talk a little bit about how you're feeling about the SMED requirements so far after your annual report submittal earlier this year and kind of where you're currently struggling. We're hoping to collect a lot of this input early on in this process so we can really reflect that in the tools that we developed. There is a QR code here that you can scan, and I will pull up the web link in a minute as well. So you can go to menti.com and there'll be a code at the top of my next slide, but I'll give folks a minute to scan that with their phones and jump into the poll, and then I'll go ahead and share my screen with the poll. All right, oop, responses coming in already, great. Okay, so the first question here is, how are you feeling about the SMED requirements after your annual report submittal earlier this year? So we're starting to see some responses come in, ranging all the way from 1, unsure where to start, to okay, 3, neutral, 4, good, and then great is number 5, already met our target. So maybe some of those jurisdictions with a smaller area to retrofit, it's a little bit easier to get to that target. But as Don mentioned, they've got quite a lot of acreage in Bellevue that they're needing to meet. So that gets a little trickier as you get in those higher acreage areas and built out jurisdictions. So we've got a few folks that have already met their target. That's great. And quite a few in the unsure where to start and okay range. So that's, yeah, what we're hoping to address through our project. All right, sounds good. Looks like things have stopped moving around there. Feel free to chime in there if you, and then up at the top of the screen, there is the menti.com and the code there if you didn't see that earlier. The next question is, where are you currently struggling with retrofit planning and SMED requirements? So this is open field here to type in your thoughts. As I mentioned, this will help us as we get started on this project to take a look at developing tools that are really helping jurisdictions. So as I mentioned, we're developing tools for both phase 1 and phase 2 jurisdictions and focusing on a few different areas, looking at planning, reporting, and mapping. So if you want to chime in on any of those topics, we'd love your feedback. And if the Menti is not working for you for whatever reason, feel free to type that in the Zoom chat as well, and we will take a look at that as well. All right, so I got a couple of responses coming in here. One jurisdiction's not really looking at this yet. One is having trying to get interest from management to discuss the topic. So trying to kind of share that information with management and how to have those conversations, trying to figure out how to calculate the equivalent acres. Not many of us have experience with WWHM, hoping to make a tool that can get those acres easier. Not struggling yet, that's good. Funding, yep, to actually implement projects. Support from management, that came up a couple times here. Talking about cross-jurisdictional collaboration between phase 1 and phase 2s. Defining the different project types. So lots of great input here. Thank you, everyone. Concern that our retrofits will get done in time, has been started but may not be done in time. All right, great. Well, feel free to keep chiming in there. We'll keep this poll open. There is a third question that may pop up, but hold on that for now. We'll jump back over to that in just a minute. All right, but for now, we're going to jump back into our presentation and talk a little bit about the gross grant that we were awarded. And I will, Don, do you want to give the overview here?
Sure, happy to.
Great.
So I touched on this a little bit. So the gross grant, this came around. We started talking about this earlier in the year, I believe, Rebecca. I think it was like January, February, when we were looking at the equivalent acres. And like one of you said on there, the Western Washington hydraulic model, I had pulled that down and I was playing around with it. And yeah, it's cumbersome to use if you've never used it before. And I started looking at all my sites around town saying, wow, this is going to be a lot of work and I'm going to have to hire this out to consultants to get to figure out where my best site is. So then when we started talking, Herrera asked me, what's your concerns with this process? And I said, it's just overwhelming to us. We have all these potential sites that we could do in Bellevue, but I don't know which one to focus on because everyone requires a ton of investigation because they're all underground. They all have to have pavement opened up, measure downs, modeling, the whole works. So we said, what if we could make a tool that would help focus down and give you a reduced amount of sites that you could focus in on and target your dollars there. And I said that would be fabulous. So we put the idea together and it just recently got accepted. So the gross grant is moving forward and we're waiting for the paperwork from Ecology to actually get this thing going forward. Bellevue will be the primary on this. Herrera will be doing the work. And actually Tanya McFarland, my illicit discharge specialist, is going to be the primary contact on this following this meeting today. So I think that gives the background.
Yeah, great. Okay. Thank you, Don.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so luckily Ecology has this funding available for these grants of regional or statewide significance to really pool funding and help a variety of different jurisdictions. We've worked on a few of these different types of projects. So this one will be great to really take the needs in the region and try to develop tools that will help you meet those requirements. So the way that the grant application to Ecology was structured, starting off with developing this technical advisory committee, which we'll be touching on towards the end of the meeting today. So if you're interested in helping shape these tools, we've got a survey at the end to provide your contact information there. We're hoping to have 4 to 6 different members representing both phase 1 and phase 2s across Western Washington be part of that. If we have more interest, great, we'll take more people, but hoping to have 4 to 6 minimum participating in that. The task 3 is really where a bulk of this project will be focused. The primary goal here is to develop both phase 1 and phase 2 planning tools, Hoping to have that be in a user-friendly interface. We'll be talking about some different ways for that to look, possibly a dashboard for reviewing output, and then also exporting into Ecology's Excel reporting template. They wanted to keep that Excel template that they have for phase 2s or phase 1s consistent. So we will be making sure that the tool is able to spit output directly into that template to submit to Ecology. So our primary goal here for this task 3 is to ensure that information related to SMED requirements is compiled by permittees in a consistent fashion for the subsequent submittal and review by Ecology. And then the secondary goal is including planning functionality in the tools that will allow both phase 1 and phase 2s to interactively assess different combinations of projects for meeting their SMED requirements, while balancing other potential considerations such as cost, treatment effectiveness, complementary planning or project goals, or ancillary community benefits, including equity considerations. So making sure that we're using that information, and then the output from that will go into the reporting directly to Ecology. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. We're not quite sure exactly what the format will look like yet, but if you're part of the TAC, you can help frame what that might look like, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or web interface. There's a variety of different things it could look like. We'll also have a user guide accompanying that to walk folks through how to use the tool. And then this task 4 is shifting into providing that outreach and training on the tool itself and how to use it, so folks are able to implement that. There'll be presentations and briefings at some of the regional meetings and forums, hopefully a presentation at the next MuniCon, which will be in 2027, and then some virtual training sessions as well. And then this task 5 here, I'll be touching on this in a minute as well, but having this mapping tool to help facilitate that regional collaboration. We talked about kind of the bonus points you can get for watershed collaboration. So we wanted to make sure we had a way for folks to communicate that information and put potential projects on a map, so you can start coordinating and getting those bonus points for that watershed collaboration. Here's the approximate timeline for the project. As Don mentioned, still finalizing the grant agreement with Ecology, but hoping to kick things off in early 2026, working with the TAC to develop this tool development tech memo, what will be included in the scope of the tool, and then also some early testing of the tool as well. Through task 3, we'll be developing the tools themselves along with the user guides associated with that. And then task 4 in early 2027 will focus on those virtual training sessions, as well as developing a Thinkific online training and having those presentations to regional groups as well. And then kind of the rollout of the mapping tool also in early 2027. So the project kind of extends from January 2026 through mid 2027. And the goal is to have the deliverables completed approximately 1 year prior to the final permit deadline, which is that March 2028 that I mentioned. Nope, frozen. Let's see. Oh, there we, whoa, okay. I clicked too many times. There we go. Okay. So next, we've been working with King County on what this regional planning map might look like. This picture here is just an example of another similar tool that's kind of mapping things out throughout the region. So really the goal for this map is to support that collaboration and multi-benefit projects, support acquiring funding and prioritizing projects, support permit compliance, keeping it simple if possible. We want to make sure it's not too complex and easy for folks to get their points on the map and collaborate with others, and then build on those existing efforts that are already out there. So King County has been doing their water quality benefits evaluation, or WQBE, and Our Green Duwamish. They have some mapping tools for that already. So kind of building on those efforts and providing a way for folks to put those points on a map and help with that regional collaboration. And just because you put a point on the map doesn't mean you have to do the project. It's just throwing it out there as an idea and making sure that you're able to get that collaboration with others. So we'll be working on developing kind of the scope of the map as part of this early collaboration with the TAC and what that might look like. All right, so next we've got a little bit of time set aside for discussion. So if you could open up that Mentimeter poll again, or if you closed it, go ahead and scan this QR code here. So we want to talk about what different features of a SMED planning tool or calculator or mapping tool would help you address challenges, whether those are collaboration challenges. There were a lot of folks that talked about communication to management and how we do that. funding challenges that popped up a couple times, reporting challenges. What are some different things that this tool could help you with? All right, so I'll pop this back up here and we'll leave some time for folks to chime in here. All right, we're starting to get a couple responses in. We've got annual reporting. That's definitely something we were planning on addressing through this to help kind of streamline that process and make sure you have the right information included there and make that easy for folks to submit that information to Ecology. Collaboration options, hopefully with that, the regional mapping tool that will help with that. So funding, getting management buy-in, getting management to realize that stormwater projects have to be completed and not kick to the aid for wastewater, acre calculations. So yes, again, with the reporting and planning and reporting, there's kind of a two-phase tool there, but help folks to calculate that acreage. Identifying joint projects, calculations. Using a BMP that does not fit the guidance in Appendix 12. The definition for collaboration. Okay, yeah, we'll look into that.
Yeah, I see a lot of concerns, Rebecca, about getting management from management to buy in and then prioritizing it against your other CIP projects. And I think, yeah, if we do this right, this tool could be used for both. You know, we could show that you can combine it with other CIP projects to use multiple funds to accomplish similar goals. Some good ideas here.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah, feel free to keep chiming in there or in the chat as well. Great, this is all great input as we get started on this project. So let me go ahead and pull the slides back up. And like I said, keep chiming in on that, but we'll go ahead and take any questions that folks have at this time. And feel free to put that in the chat or to unmute and pipe up. We've got a small crowd, so love to hear from you.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet, so.
Okay. It can be questions related to the SMED requirements themselves or the tool or the work that we're planning on doing. We'll take all of the above. No questions? I've never had a presentation with no questions. Yeah.
Must have done a good job.
All right, I'll ask one.
All right, yay, Peter, go ahead.
Okay, so I asked the question about what does what is the definition of collaboration? Does it have to be a fiscal or can it just be done through an MOU or anything like that? Do we have any guidance on that? Have you heard anything from Ecology on that?
Good question. Don, do you know the answer to that? If not, I can pull up the
I do not. I haven't
chatting.
researched that yet, Peter.
Yeah, I think there is a definition in the permit, Peter, but it was intended to be, I believe, like combination of financial contributions and kind of working together. Like you can't just say, yeah, we're participating and then not actually collaborate. So I think having an MOU or a project that would impact acreage from both jurisdictions would be, yeah. Right. And I think you kind of calculate it based on like if you've only got an acre in your jurisdiction and the other 25 acres are in the neighboring jurisdiction, you know, you might get a smaller credit based on that.
I was wondering if you share the same watershed and you're both working in the same watershed to achieve the same watershed goals or plan or something like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's identifying those collaborative projects more like regional facility approach. So where you can put one facility in, but get benefits for both jurisdictions. So yeah, I believe, yeah, King County is working on one with Seattle. That's kind of in that White Center area where it has benefit to both jurisdictions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
collaboration note, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our experience as a phase one is that there's no incentive for a phase two to, in the permit, to join a collaborative effort, which is somewhat unfortunate, it seems. I don't know if there was some history in that, but it really reduces motivation, I think, or it could.
Yeah, it is mentioned in Appendix 12, but I'm trying to remember if there's a calculation associated with that. Don, do you recall? It does say how to calculate credit for regional collaboration. So there is a benefit. It says phase two permittees may receive up to 25% of their assigned acreage credit from collaborative projects. So there's a credit, but up to a cap.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So that would be, I guess, the motivation, Jennifer, is to have that kind of meeting your requirement and being able to calculate some additional bonus points there. So it's weird. It's kind of tucked into, it's the bottom of page 11 of Appendix 12, if you're looking for that.
Okay. I have one question in the chat from Antonio. He asks me, says, I mentioned 50% non-structural BMGs to achieve my goals. What were some of the specific parts implemented? So we were able to leverage pipe cleaning as a large portion of that. We do a pipe cleaning program ahead of our video inspection. So we leveraged all that pipe cleaning. We got quite a few miles out, or quite a few acres out of that with the linear footage conversion that they have there. We also do some big vault cleaning periodically. So I went back to 2023 and pulled all the records of the invoices of the vault cleaning, and we'd had several that were over $25,000. So between the pipe cleaning, the vaults, and then the upcoming street sweeping metrics, we're easily going to get to the 25% non-structural BMPs. And as I was trying to explain, to get the other 25%, you'll need to do over and above inside of your SMAP area. So you'll need to do almost a secondary program inside your SMAP area that targets one of those four components. And I believe it was illicit discharge, source control, education and outreach, or enhanced maintenance.
I have a question on that. I didn't think that street sweeping was allowed as a non-structural for inside the SMED. I thought it was just in the opportunistic area that it was allowed. Is that correct?
No, I think it's if you go over and above what your program goals are.
Right. So there's two categories, and one is for non-structural inside the SMED and non-structural outside the SMED.
SMED or SMAP?
SMAP. Sorry.
Yeah.
Too many S's. Too many. Yeah.
We do have a lot of S's. Yeah.
Yeah. So so just if is there clarification on that? Because it's non-qualifying types, or I mean qualifying types inside the SMED versus qualifying types out for the opportunistic. And I thought they were two different categories of two different sets of BMPs.
I'd have to go read it again, Peter, but I believe you're correct. I think it's outside the SMAP in opportunistic areas. You need to go above and beyond with your existing program. I'm not relying a lot on our street sweeping. We'll have probably more than enough by the time we get to that. Another question from Melinda. Will this calculate if we go over the requirements, and how will that translate to the next permit cycle? What would that look like? So are you talking about if we do non-structural work, can we roll that into the next permit cycle? Is that the question?
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
I think I was thinking about the actual program that they're developing for Herrera for the calculations and things. How would that look in that program?
Yeah, I think what we'll maybe do as part of the tool is make sure you're able to select, this permit term versus next permit term. And there is that kind of 50% rollover credit that you can fold into the next permit term. We are thinking a little bit about how this tool will be modified or be able to be modified in the future. So I think being able to kind of have a drop down of the permit term that'll help roll over the excess credit. So we'll think about how to reflect that, but make sure that you're not losing any projects that you put in there. So.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Not seeing any in the chat.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and reshare and talk a little bit about the TAC here. So as I mentioned, we have a technical advisory committee that we'll be putting together as part of this project. And I mentioned that'll be starting up in early next year. So if folks are interested in participating with that, you'll have a chance to help shape the project deliverables, a chance to beta test the tools and the map and really get your input in there. So that's a great way to kind of shape what these tools look like and make sure that they'll work for you. So you can go ahead and just scan that QR code. It's a very short survey, just 4 questions, whether you're a phase 1, phase 2 permittee, your name, your jurisdiction, and your email address. So pretty short form to fill out there. You can also always email Don or I directly, or also Lori, and we'll make sure you get included on the TAC that way. So yeah, really hoping to make this really collaborative regional project and make sure we address as many needs as we can and help make this a little less confusing, since it is kind of a complicated section of the permit. We want to make sure that it's easy to understand and have consistent results across the region. Yeah, if we don't have any other questions, I'll just leave this slide up. But yeah, happy to take any other questions if folks want to chime in or type something in the chat. But if not, we'll let you go a little bit early. And thank you for attending today. And hopefully you learned something. And then if you've got ideas as we go throughout this project, happy to take those as well.